Okay, so here's what we currently have on the front of the 4runner. It's good quality stuff. Bilstein 5100, as you can see, it's up at the very highest setting that it has. Gets you about a 2.5-inch lift. I'm pretty sure it's a factory upper control arm from what I can see from my research online. And there's not been a diff drop kit done on the front side. Also, you'll come in here in a second and look, we've got the factory bump stops, which are just a hard piece of rubber. So we're gonna replace that with a nice soft Duro bump, active bump stop. That's really gonna absorb that full G out compression. So that's what we got on the front, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the back. Okay, so I'm Keith, makes these rear track bar relocation brackets. They are really well made. They go right on top of your existing bracket, so we'll have to move that brake line. So this guy will go right on there, but you have to weld it on. That's gonna move the rear track bar up, so once we're lifted, it continues to stay flat, adding stability to the back. So that's what's going on the backside for the relocation bracket. We're also going to no longer be running these rear airbag setups on inside our rear springs. So our new springs will be able to handle the weight without having to have that airbag setup too. But these are the Bilsteins that we took out. As you can see, we've got a much heavier duty shock from Elka here with the coilover on it. Bottom's much beefier than the Bilstein, and the shock's also reversed. You've got your ram on the bottom versus on the top. So a little bit different design, a little bit beefier setup. Hey guys, flash forward about 3 months ago, we put the suspension on this and we've had a pretty busy 3 months. Our job takes us through a lot of off-roading. I'd say realistically, we're doing about 70% dirt and about 30% highway. That terrain that we've been on has been down in southern Arizona, a lot of dirt, some like light rock gardens, nothing crazy rock crawly, but some mild stuff. We've had some deep sandy washes. We've had some very steep entrances and exits from those washes, as well as some big articulation areas. We've also been up in the forest. We've had some higher speed washboard stuff with a bunch of potholes, some little G-out sections, and the suspension has performed really well through all of that. So we've also done some towing with this too. We had some equipment down in Arizona. We needed to move up to Montana. So we had a 12 by 6 foot trailer on the back of here, and the HD springs in the back really leveled the truck out with all the stuff in there, and it drove great on the highway. So it's a really nice setup. We're very happy with all of the choices that we've made to put into this truck. We went ahead with the Elka's IFS setup. It's their 2.5 series shocks. So one of the reasons we went with this specific Elka shock without having an external reservoir is it's still a 2.5 heavy duty sized shock, but it's gonna have a much quicker installation, so you're not dealing with the external reservoir. You can just literally bolt in, bolt out with whatever you already have in there. So it's a much faster, easier install. As for the durability of it, what we're doing with this vehicle is a lot more low speed off-road travel. It's going to perform very well. Good articulation is what we need, but we don't necessarily need the high speed articulation and the external reservoir, which is gonna cool the fluids down. We're not creating as much heat, but it's a good all-around rebuildable shock, and it's really, really nice, kind of middle of the road. Not their highest end stuff, but you can save yourself about $1,000 over their top end with the reservoirs, and still fully rebuildable, so you can revalve them and change the oils when it's time. We also did a 650 pound front spring rate. We do have a winch in here, so we wanted, with the bumper and the lights and the winch and the bigger V8, we wanted a good spring rate on the front. We went ahead with the Total Chaos upper control arms. Those are going to do a couple things for you. They're going to adjust your caster by about 3 degrees, helping keeping the wheels in alignment. They're beefier, they're also heavier duty, but at the same time, they're also going to give you about 1 inch more droop when your suspension fully extends. So it just enhances the suspension, keeps it better for high-speed cornering. Upper control arms, if you're going to do a 3-inch lift, they really are a must to make sure your caster and everything stays proper. Underneath that, in between the lower control arm, we did the DuraBump active bump stops. We did those front and rear. Those are a progressive bump stop. So what that means is there's a softer rubber at the beginning that then compresses down to a harder rubber down at the bottom. And what that does is it's a really inexpensive mod to do to your suspension that keeps the shock and impact when you're off-roading from transferring to the frame. It also keeps your shocks G-out on those hard G-outs from compressing fully and potentially damaging the shock. So it adds a whole lot of suspension with a very inexpensive thing to do to your lift to give it a much better ride off-road. Also in the front, in the center, we went with Toytech. They do a differential drop kit. So what that does, it takes the 2 bolts on the front of your differential, drops it down, and it helps change the angle of your front CV joints, reducing wear on them during normal driving conditions. That way they're not at that, 3-inch lifted, more severe angle. So we've got that on the front. Moving on to the back, we went ahead with Toytech again. We have their Superflex HD rear coils in the back. As you can see right now, we're a little stink bug. We're not fully loaded, but they are really nice to have when you're on the trail. You're fully loaded. You've got all your gear, the 2 of us, the dogs, everything. That extra bit of spring rate in the back is great. The thing to keep in mind is it is a Superflex coil pack. So when you do those, Toytech also sells an extended steel braided brake line that you put on there. That way at full droop, you're not stressing those factory brake lines out to the point where they may snap and have a brake failure. So again, 3-inch lift, Superflex rear coil kit, you're gonna need that additional stretch in the rear brake line. We swapped out, we had a set of Goodyears on here. We just moved to Toyo's new RT Trail. Is a hybrid in between their all-terrain and their mud terrain. It's got a much heavier duty sidewall than the all-terrain. And again, being in that aggressive desert environment you're in, we really wanted to make sure that we had a good sidewall on there. They're quiet on the highway. They're not as loud as mud terrains for sure. Far, been really happy with them. We are really happy with the highway performance. The off-road performance has been great and look forward to many miles ahead of off-roading with this truck.